I guess I would start with saying that housing is a constant for this site, okay? The idea that a developer would come in and build a new commercial office tower has been vetted and not possible to the market. So the old one failed and has had several issues. So we're not going to place a high density commercial project on this corner. And that's the feedback that we get from the market. We can't create that. Vertical mixed use by any metric, similar to what's being contemplated, is rare. A lot of the developers that we discussed previously wanted to do just housing because that's what is feasible in communities like ours and many others in the area. So the fact that we can get some programming on the first floor is very substantial in our estimation. Again, we talked about this, the current city hall, if it went away and was replaced by commercial, it wouldn't be one for one. It would be a few more retail storefronts that would be competing with our existing vacant storefronts at a higher cost. So creating that vacant space just for the sake of having it is not a good business decision, certainly, and it doesn't help drive it at some of the issues for revitalizing the corridor. What we think does drive at that is putting density on the corner, so the housing. Density drives demand. So if you put users of services and retail in your corridor with disposable income, it stimulates our existing retail and commercial and leads to growth and stabilization of all of those area amenities. Excuse me. And this project alone, City Hall or not, is significant from a tax-based perspective no matter how we look at it. It's estimated that it'll be valued between $60 and $65 million right now, total project. That's really with or without City Hall, so it's significant by all measures. Yeah. And removal of the current City Hall, again, creates room for additional taxable space to kind of massage and balance the loss on one site and the availability at another. And then there's been some concerns about a missed opportunity to just activate the area by not having more commercial and retail. I guess staff would flip that and believe that this does deliver on that expectation, just in a different way. City Hall provides stability to the corner with a constant occupant that drives that pedestrian traffic. Residents will activate this corridor of the facility, of the building, with 250 apartments, again supporting local businesses and hopefully stimulating additional growth and putting people in the vicinity to explore what's already there. So that's the gist of the feedback that we've been given, and that's all I have.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The 40th Ave or the Murzyn Hall site, does the budget take into account upgrading this building at all?
This budget here, could you repeat this?
Yeah.
So I'm asking if the Murzyn Hall would be updated in the plan when it's connected to the new City Hall, if that's what we go with.
So the question was, does the budget right now include updates to Murzyn Hall?
Yes.
So the $8 million does not include updates to Murzyn Hall. Okay.
From what was said, I understand that 40th and Central, there will be 0 public parking then after this is done. And we all currently have multi-level parking wrapped at the shopping mall across the street utilizes a lot, and this will eliminate that altogether. So the theater, the rest of the retail there, everybody on 40th and Central have no access anymore.
That's correct. So under the 40th and Central plan, with some caveats, there's public parking for users of City Hall. So the people that are coming to City Hall, but it's not programmed to be shared for the surrounding businesses.
One thing to add to that, so with the building, the previous building owner, there was an agreement that that ramp was going to revert for $1 to the building owner in 2021. So that was going to go away as public parking no matter what. So that's an important factor. And again, the public parking is important, and that's one of the reasons we're looking at that other location behind the library.
Right, thank you. Very important factor. Under the other iterations that retained the ramp under someone else's ownership, it would have been for the use of any revitalization of the existing building and completely under their control. So if it was housing, rehabbed housing, it would have been for those new apartments on that site.
So follow-up question. There's no more contract with that prior owner, correct? So that service agreement wouldn't exist?
Right,
So right now, we're back to square zero as far as that property is. Turn that parking lot over to somebody else, right? So that service agreement you mentioned really is void at this point.
right. It was eliminated when the city bought it.
Correct. Okay, so I'm very
Yeah.
Oh, could you show on the map where the current, that alley is? Where that would go through the building?
Oh, the alley that goes between the ramp and
Yeah,
the...
so we got some idea how far back the building's
Oh,
going on
that's
the property?
just approximately, I think, we're in that vicinity, It covers the entire site, the footprint of the building and the underground parking, almost from edge to edge of the property lines. I don't have a real good graphic to illustrate that.
So the indentation on the right side, that would be the current alley going behind the houses?
No, this where it juts out is a single-family lot that the city owns. Right now, there's a stormwater basin here. It just works out in such a way that provides a perfect space for the ramp for the underground parking. So the alley behind that goes behind the houses, will still be accessible. It is somewhere in that vicinity.
It's right where your finger is, and then that comes out to 40th Avenue. That remains.
That will stay intact.
There's no change to that.
There's like 2 alleys there in that vicinity, sorry.
Thank you. You mentioned one of the pros of putting City Hall at 40th and Central is that it leaves, I think you said it leaves the space here next to Murzyn Hall as an opportunity for commercial?
Not commercial. For
You said
redevelopment.
you said for taxable
Development.
income?
Yeah, likely housing. It likely wouldn't be a commercial site.
Okay, we might have, the option could be housing next to a QSIT in Murzyn Hall?
Potentially.
Is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's just spitballing, what would be likely, I guess, in my
Okay.
estimation.
Thank you.
Do we have any definition of what luxury apartment means, and how have they done any study to know how we will attract people looking for that kind of apartment?
Good question. So luxury, I guess the easiest way to describe it is top of the class in our market. So the highest quality apartments that are being built, it's on par with that. Aladdis, the developer, that's all they do for apartment buildings. High amenities, so workout facility, grocery store, concierge service, dog parks, Sky Lounge. There'll be a 6th floor amenity deck on the roof, essentially, that has a kitchen. The city council toured their recent facility, built New Hope, that they intend to replicate on this site with the same amenities. It's the top of that class. Class A is how it's referred to within the market. So they've done a market study, obviously. Rents will be lower in Columbia Heights for the same type of facility in a different community. So it'll be adjusted, to be more in alignment with what they think they can secure. But our biggest draw from that perspective is proximity to downtown. We're on that edge, and for people that are being priced out of the downtown market, they'll find a place here that would be a good landing spot. Target market, empty nesters, and young professionals. It's a preponderance of efficiencies in 1-bedrooms with a handful of 3-bedroom units that are quite large. 3-bedroom units are 1,500 square feet. So it really is catering to maybe a person that's lived here for a long time, that's ready to sell their single-family home, but still wants something nice that can stay in the community, and then attracting, new young families to the area. So.
I have a few questions. One is, would there be any potential to have a mixed-use building at the existing site? So that's one question. The second is kind of a comment. I know that there are many people still alive who ice skated in the area where the 40th and Central site is, and it seems like it would be expensive to keep water from intruding into an underground parking. So that's another. If we own the building at 40th and Central, why rush? Can't we have some more community input as to what people might like to see there? We have the money in the bank for for a lot of the city hall stuff. So I would like to see a more open process in gathering ideas. And things like why the developer was contracted before we had public input and things like that. So, yeah.
Would you address soil or water, maybe, Kevin, and what we know?
Sure. So the ramp does get back up into it from stormwater. The city did improvements, and actually we did the improvements on the county roadway and put all new storm sewer in on both sides of that, so that problem is corrected. We did that work in 2017. So we have dual storm sewers, brand new, that go down 40th Avenue that correct that problem. So what you see coming in there is actually coming in from Google, and with that new development, that problem will go away. In terms of the soil types, it's part of construction. If they end up finding unsuitable soils, they're going to be on pilings. You know, the theater's on pilings, the library's on pilings, and that's just part of the construction. They'll do their due diligence and figure out what they need to put on their footings. So as far as the drainage goes, you're right. The old maps of Bell Pond actually used to come into this area, all the way down to the library. So soil borings will prove what they need to do there, and that'll be part of the construction.
The existing building doesn't sit on deep foundations currently, so it doesn't. It's not on pilings. The Northeast Bank building. So I might need some help in remembering all the questions, but one was is mixed use viable here? I think the short answer is no, from our professional opinion. When you get off the central corridor, you're no longer able to contemplate a mixed use development because there just is not the traffic going to serve any sort of use on the main floor. City Hall might be an option, but that has not been identified as
Isn't that what we're talking about at 40th?
Yeah, but you wouldn't have any other commercial component. So, yeah, I think if we had a choice, we wouldn't build apartments above City Hall here, if that's what you're asking.
Why not? It's on the 11 bus line.
Yeah, but it's not frequent as the 10.
Right. So you wouldn't get the same type of apartments, certainly. We could verify that.
It would be away from all the particulates on State Highway 65, and people might like it to be quieter, so.
But then we would have to take on that risk of that apartment building as a city, right? Unless you could rope in a contractor to take it.
Theoretically, I mean, the whole basis of the analysis is one versus the other. So, this is the standalone site, and for those market reasons, it's more feasible at Central. We couldn't pull off the same project.
Just to add to that, the city doesn't want to be in the business of owning housing. That's not where we excel. So it's one thing when we purchase a condo space that someone else owns all of the housing for. It's another if we try and build a city hall here and build housing on top of it. That's just not, Parkviewville is a good example. That's not something we're going to be doing.
Well, I mean, we could hire a property manager. We don't really sell alcohol either, but we've got several liquor stores.
It's a different topic for a different time. We're talking about city hall sites right now.
Okay, there's one other component, what was the final part?
The developer contract before there was any input.
Oh, and that goes to why so quick. Okay, so certainly after acquiring the site, there's an urgency from our perspective to get our money back. And when a developer delivers on all of the criteria that this has been guided for, that there wasn't a reason to go further to seek a different developer out of that pool that had been established. If you do have to buy in that it is the best project and the best use, and that was a determination made by the council that this is what we want, so who will do it? We don't need to offer it to the next Aladdis, essentially. But there absolutely is an urgency to complete a project here from a variety of reasons. Practically speaking, to recapture our funds and eliminate that risk. That keeps me up at night. And then realizing a goal that's been long-standing. So we've waited long enough. That site has been a problem for many years. So there's no time like the present to do that, do something there. There's also a...
Yeah, but intersecting the city hall project with this particular development is not necessarily.
Right, part of the, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If I can just add that part of the piece of transparency in our community, we all have the opportunity to attend the work sessions and the council meetings, and that's where a lot of these decisions and a lot of these things come forward, is at the work session, the planning committee, and I think it's important that we all own that piece of it, and we can invest ourselves as little or as deeply as we choose to. But if I have found, I attend a lot of those meetings, and I have found that in doing so, I have learned a lot more about what goes on in our community, and I think that's an important piece that we need to own as individuals.
There's not enough room in that space.
I can guarantee you, if they could fill up the council chambers with bodies for a work session, I'll bet you in a flash they would do it.
Thanks for hosting this here. Appreciate it. You had talked about some of the risks of putting a mixed-use city hall and luxury apartments on 40th and Central. That's a partnership in that mixed use, and that comes with some of its own risks. How are we going to mitigate that risk?
Okay, so what are some of the risks that you have in mind when you think about that? So
I'm thinking of like, what if the luxury apartments fail?
Okay. Right, so we have the opportunity to exit the space as well. So if you own your condo, we could divide it into something different, and move on as well. There has to be a degree of faith or certainty that your partner is the right one to pull this off. They certainly, within the industry, have a track record that we believe in and have built projects that are very significant and have lasted, the test of time. But yeah, I don't know what total failure would look like of the apartments. That's a pretty broad spectrum. But if it got untenable, we would have the option to leave as kind of the nuclear option. To make sure that doesn't happen, I think it's good management of that relationship. It's starting off with the right agreements on the front end, which we need to be meticulous and diligent about creating the best cohabitation structure that we can. Shared parking, shared costs, and all of those things to the best of our ability, because we believe that it can work. But there is a stopgap, I think, when you own it.
And it's a relatively unprecedented model.
Indeed, yes.
To that point about the bridging the gap, or the mixed use, so I work in a mixed use building. I work for Alina, so we are downtown in the old Sears building, which is a mixed use building. So there's condos above us, there's Alina with over 2,000 employees in it, and there's Hennepin County has a big licensing downstairs, and then of course the global market with all those. So have you talked with them about some of the issues that they've seen in trying to manage that type of mixed-use building?
Not that specific building. We've developed a list of partners that we'd like to reach out to get some more detailed feedback on what we can learn, best practices, but haven't done that analysis. That's a great example of.
Because one of the things that we have there in the building as you walk in is it's got its own security desk. So would that be something that would, be within this building where there is on-site security that kind of helps manage the people in the apartments, getting people in and out, and parking ramps and all that stuff kind of gets managed by that security crew?
Okay, so at the present, on-site full-time security is not being contemplated in that way. They do have on-site management for their facilities, certainly, that have offices there every day. Security is a priority for both parties, and creating secure entrances into each space, but also making it welcoming so that the public feels, welcome to roam around all the public space, but not find their way into the apartments. The security that Aladdis is used to providing after touring one of their facilities, in my estimation, is cutting edge as far as how they control access within their building. I think our council members could attest. They don't have keys. It's all on your smartphone or a key fob. They can restrict where everyone goes, and then they take images of each entry into any access, so there's a face with that. It's highly secure. The owner has a vested interest. The developer in this case, his daughter was broken into at her apartment building, home invasion while she was home. So it's definitely near and dear to what they do in their business model. And I think one of the takeaways from the council, everyone was like, wow, technology, security was really impressive there. We want to obviously integrate all of those best practices into New City Hall. The unfortunate reality is that you have to plan for things that you didn't used to. We're going to rely on architects and engineers that are doing this, in any sort of municipal building or any apartment to integrate as many safety measures as we feel necessary to find that balance between open and accessible and secure. Always going to be an element of risk.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a statement. We did, as a council and some staff, tour Ironwood over in New Hope. If you are interested in looking at their website, they have some very detailed pictures that would give you an idea of what we're expecting here. It's called lifeatironwood.com. Take a look at it. It'll give you a concept as to what we looked at and the quality of their work.
I had questions regarding the parking. So we have the ground floor parking, and then there's the underground parking. And based upon the number of units that they're talking about, is the underground parking going to be enough parking for all the residents? And the second part of that is are they going to be required to use that? In other words, is that part of their rent for that? Because we've had issues at other apartments where that hasn't been the case. So, are we going to have some sort of an incentive to make sure they actually do use that? And is there going to be enough, to have it just as one underground level versus digging down further?
So the short answer is yes, there'll be enough parking. We will design and plan for that and co-create that balance with the developer through the land use approval process. It's very fluid right now. We've got just under 100 spaces on the surface at ground level, and underneath I think it's 300 plus, 400 plus parking spaces programmed in the facility as it stands. There will be flex space for residents on that surface lot. Their priority and predominant parking is underground. They do have to pay for it, so there's a cost associated with it. I think some of the issues that we've observed in other facilities, it's a different product type. In a affordable housing scenario, if you have a choice to pay for parking or finding something else, it might be that the easier choice is to look elsewhere and create some of those issues that maybe you're alluding to. here, I don't think we'll encounter that same problem. But it is separately paid for. Really, I think the decision that most folks here will be deciding is if they have one at all, because they're using transportation or biking, or if they have two, because you can choose to have two spaces, and it's first come, first served in that regard.
So we've talked to other developments like that and seen if they had parking issues with like an Ironwood?
So we will do an analysis that includes calculations from similar like projects. I think that's always part of the planning commission's review. But to be perfectly honest, the industry trends towards the leanest parking counts that you can be comfortable with. And that's where they're tailoring that to their clientele. If they run out of parking for their residents, it's going to be their problem, and it's not going to spill into on-street in this situation. We can manage against that. So if they don't build enough, it'll be more so the developer's issue, but we're gonna approve it. So we will say that it is or isn't enough.
I had heard that there might be a community component as far as like a community room. You talked about that 6th floor. Is that in the discussion?
Not for community use, so that would be residential.
Okay, just
yeah,
strictly.
it's an amenity for the apartments.
Okay, I didn't know if that might be open to the city or something.
Yeah.
There's a community room though, at least in Wisconsin.
Yeah, if City Hall's located here, there are several community amenities. Right now, we're trying to program a large community room on Central, that is very inviting and high amenities for all, to be rented out for any sort of event.
What is the size of that compared to, say, the library one?
This here?
Yeah.
This is so fluid, and this could change. I think it's listed at about 900 square feet. Smaller.
And is the council chambers roughly the same size?
Bigger, 1,600, or roughly the same. Yeah, I think
Okay.
we're right around that.
Okay.
And that's constant at both locations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Erin, do you want to maybe speak to, at one of the meetings, the developer talked about, in terms of the parking, talked about how we would work together with that development company, or the residents with the parking available to a city hall, and how that might be managed. And also the other component, which was rather progressive, was to have the Conduit run for plug-in cars, that there would be so many spaces initially, and that there would be additional, the Conduit would be run for all parking spaces. I think that's a big plus.
Yeah, absolutely. They're building in the capacity for future electrical vehicle plugins in all of the underground spots as well as the surface. To manage the parking, we would have a designated group of spaces for strictly city. With the other stuff, you can play with intermittent because they're complementary time frames. City Hall business is predominantly during the day when the residents are gone, so you can co-use that space. Night meetings are the difference in that, where we would still have all of our staff space for night meetings where there's only a handful of staff, is just one example. And also overflow in our library expansion. There's the Fairview ramp in the vicinity. We're gonna have to rely on some different strategies and amenities for different things, but there'll be growing pains with that. They're talking about different ways to designate and control the space with technological. If you've been to the Mall of America, the parking ramps there have green light, red light, a similar type of system to indicate what's available for public space. There's going to be issues. People will park where they're not supposed to, and we will have to manage our way through those. If it does go there.
I had a concern I've asked a couple times, and when someone asked about the global market situation, that I'm surprised that you guys haven't talked to other places that are doing something similar. And the city council is supposed to vote, I think, next week on this. And I feel like getting information of how it's been going for Waconia, the one in Florida, I don't think has been built yet, so there's no way to find out how that's working. But I think the example of the old Sears building is at least some place to start. But I've asked a couple times, well, have you done this yet? Or, oh yeah, we're going to ask about it and see some feedback. But what if the feedback comes in January and it's, we wish we hadn't done it, but no one's done that yet? I think that'd be important.
That's fair. We will do that. I think from staff's opinion, it's not the driving decision-making factor.
It's one more point though.
Right. There are so many other moving parts that we're trying to vet, and the examples, if we have two, like, is that conclusive? We are taking a leap in many ways in doing this, if we do.
Well, and to clarify, Waconia is a different setup, so that's a city hall attached, but it's an HRA-owned apartment complex, so it's still publicly owned space. I'd be curious on, and we'll check in with Hennepin County, because most of what we've been asking the architect about, it ends up being that the public entity is leasing the space, which is a very different setup than owning and condoing the space. So
Yeah, I believe Alina, we lease our space there at the commons, yeah.
So that unfortunately, what we have come across has not been comparable. But we continue to vet where we can.
I'll say I like working at a mixed-use space.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Oh,
Sorry. Yeah, so two questions. One is, when I heard about this project, where the city had acquired this location for redevelopment, I was excited about the prospect of commercial space, especially when I heard it was a mixed-use development. And so is this, it sounds like it's kind of leaning towards this is the better option for the location for City Hall or the preferred option. So does that mean that we're pessimistic about the ability to attract commercial tenants to this mixed-use space where residents of the city could perhaps bring some of the shopping that they do in other cities? We do a lot of our shopping in other cities because we can't get what we need in Columbia Heights. And then the other question I have is, we were lucky enough to get a sitter so that we could come to this meeting that we found out about last week. Are there other opportunities besides attending things on a weeknight to provide feedback and get information?
So, the last question first, maybe. This is right now the open house that we anticipate before we ask the city council to decide between the two locations. From there, there's several opportunities to engage on the design and planning. It'll go through the land use and entitlement process no matter what happens here. And if City Hall went here, there'll be public hearings around planning and zoning. So specifics of what go in. But broadly speaking about what goes where and where we might locate City Hall, this is our last anticipated pit stop for that conversation.
And it's always in person.
What's that?
It's always, the opportunity to provide feedback is always in person.
Predominantly.
And always on like a Wednesday night or?
So city council meetings are on Monday nights, planning and zoning on Tuesdays, and yeah.
That being said, so the brochure with the pros and cons, some of this information will be put out on our website when it's done. We're always open to accepting